We really just thought we were blowing up when we went on tour and the contracts came about.
I had been involved with a couple of the early rap records that had success. I was managing a group called the World Class Wrecking Crew through a guy named Alonzo Williams. So that's how I met Eazy. He played me a couple of tracks, played me a track called Boys in the Hood, which I thought was probably the most important record that I had heard since the beginning of rock and roll.
The all-star group is all of us, me, Dre, Ren, Ice Cube, and mine is me, solo. That's my album. It's by myself, solo.
We make our records based on stuff that's happening where we live, you know.
Everybody grew up in the street. Everybody know what's going on.
That's explaining how it is with us. You know, where we're coming from. Not Beverly Hills or nothing like that. That's explaining how it is in Compton.
Eazy and NWA dropped their first record. The music business, the streets had changed dramatically, okay? The streets had went from being cool to being very hostile and very violent. And Eazy them created the soundtrack for the streets.
Everything you hear on our records is true.
Like, we got a real controversial song coming out called The Police.
It'll be out in January.
What is that talking about? Well,
self-explanatory. The police.
For no reason at all, because you black, you got a little bit of money.
And we getting back at them.
Beepers,
all police ain't bad police. It's like 90% of them. You know,
and
we're talking about that 90%.
Sometimes I want to kick the shit out of them because they've been having me face down. Want to kick the shit out of them.
since you've been in the music business, have you
Before? Probably not.
This letter had come in from the FBI, and I was asked to deal with it, handle it, or whatever. And at the time, this was the first time we'd ever really seen, you know, the federal government or a police organization or whatever go after a rap group that we know of and come out and actually take credit for it. The federal government is not supposed to intimidate, suppress, or in any manner stop the dissemination of constitutionally protected material. And if anything ever was in the history of rap music constitutionally protected, it had to have been the song The Police. I later asked Eric about it, and he just thought it was hysterical. He thought this stuff was, like, funny. I think he was amused that people thought it was so important what he did and what he thought. I think that amused him. He was terribly amused. He had dinner with the president, and he just thought it was the most funny thing in the world that he got to have dinner with the president.
No, I wouldn't know I was having lunch with Bush. It was that I'm on these things called Athletes and Entertainers for Kids, Make-A-Wish Foundation. I give a lot of donations to different organizations. So what they did is they picked my name off for giving donations, and they sent me an invitation to come down there. An invitation said, we want to invite you to the Republicans' party. I'm not no Republican, you know. So I went down there. When we went down there, as soon as I got off the plane, you had CBS, CNN, and all these people like Eazy-E, gang member, drug dealer, and all this, you know, comes down here to the president's luncheon and all that, you know, and they just blew it up. Basically, what I did is I paid $1,500 for $1 million worth of press.
Above all, Eazy was the consummate businessman. He understood power, he understood marketing, he understood control. He was very Machiavellian. You know, for Ruthless, in the early days, Ice Cube verbalized, Dre musicalized, Eazy conceptualized, and I financialized, and that's what Ruthless was. If anyone thinks that someone beside Eazy-E ran that company, then it was someone that really didn't know Eazy-E.
I learned a lot from Eazy. I learned a lot about business. I learned a lot about, you know, you don't have to transform yourself to be a good businessman. You don't have to put on three-piece suits. And you can just kind of like be yourself. You could be young, hungry, and successful, you know, and I mean, that's what I learned from him, you know, and I still use some of the things that I learned from his business, you know, practices to this day.
Eazy had a concept, or the concept evolved at Ruthless, which I thought was a terrific concept. We took all the best people, they worked on a record, we finished the record, we put the record out, and we started on the next record. So we did Straight Outta Compton, we did Eazy Does It. When we're done with that, we did Michelet's record, we did DOC's record. So you had the single most talented person in the history of rap music, Andre Young, doing the producing. And, you know, we had all the best guys doing the writing, Doc and Cube and Eazy. And I'll tell you something, only later on, after Dre left, did we get away from those principles that made us so successful.
We met back in 1990 originally. Just based off an image, I thought he would be kind of disrespectful and not really have too much to talk about, and that we wouldn't have anything in common. And I was impressed in terms of he did have stuff to talk about. He was more soft-spoken and was a lot different than what I expected. He was the opposite.
Eazy was like a child himself when he was around the children. And it was really neat to see how his eyes would light up and to see his compassion and his tenderness when he was working with a child who perhaps was catastrophically ill, or another child who was homeless or abandoned, and the interaction. The thing that struck me was that he obviously did this because he really loved doing it. I think that was one of the things that I admired most, is that he was really interested in doing it because he wanted to.
The biggest thing that people thought about Eazy-E was they thought he was just rough, tough, you know, didn't care about nothing. He probably was one of the nicest people you ever would have known if you known him for real. Not as Eazy, but as Aaron Wright.